Good morning, everyone. As introduced by Akshay, my name is Arman Ali. I'm the Executive Director of NCPEDP. Though I like to speak as a panelist most, but my colleagues felt that I should moderate and not speak, so I am the moderator. And I have the honor to invite my panelist on the stage. May I just request my friend Rajiv Raturi to please join the stage. Rajiv is a strategic advisor with Saksham, Accessibility and Advocacy, and also the man behind the Supreme Court case, which is going to make accessibility a non-negotiable right for people with disability. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Rajiv with a clap. The second panelist, may I request Abhishek Kumar to join. Abhishek is climate justice on disability activist. Happens to be a former fellow of NCPEDP Javed Avedi Fellowship on Disability. Hails from Jharkhand, but is a globetrotter. Now, may I request Naman Katwani to please join us on stage. Naman is a lead and legal and policy consultant with PACTA, Law and Policy. Welcome, Naman. Thank you for taking time out for taking it here. May I now request Mr. J.K. Bantia to join us on the stage. Mr. Bantia is a former Chief Secretary of Maharashtra and was the Census Commissioner for Census 2011 and has worn many hats and global responsibilities, has conducted census in countries like Nigeria, in Myanmar and Lebanon. Continues to work in the space of health and so on. And now may I request Ms. Manmeet Nanda, Joint Secretary DEPWD, to join us on the stage. Louder, please. We will be joined by Ms. Kanchan Pamnani, who is a renowned lawyer and a known name in the area of working for people with visual impairment and their rights. Also on a trustee on the board of NCPEDP. We at NCPEDP have a history with census, and my predecessor Javed Abidi, I think, is a phenomenon when we talk about census inclusion and inclusion of disability into census and our interaction with the Census Commission and the Department of Persons with Empowerment of Persons with Disability and the disability sector. There's a lot of history, there is a lot of stories, and we have made a long journey possible. And today, at a time when the census, even though it is delayed, it is announced, it has a question on disability, it is going to be digital, it is going to be self-enumerative. There are a lot of questions around. And in this panel, we're going to talk about how, the perception of a person with disability in a sector, what do they think of the census can change, the census which is, very wide and inclusive of disability. What changes can we expect? What are the challenges that we see both on part of persons with disabilities participation and also from the government point of view, from somebody who has been the Census Commissioner? What are the challenges that, so this is, and we have, people with disability on the panel who will speak from their, experience of working in the field, interacting with various stakeholders. Abhishek in particular is a young person with disability himself. Rajiv comes with decades of experience of working in the grassroots and has been a lead advocate for rights of people with disability in many issues. There are some cross-cutting questions which I'll ask, and with NCPEDP we did an exercise where we asked people on social media, on the net, we put it out that if they have any questions around census, so they could post, and some of the questions has been included in this. That's right, Akshay, is that how we did? Yeah, so that questions are there, which is cross-cutting, will be able to. We have about an hour in this panel. We will have about 45 minutes to discuss, and then for about 15 minutes for question and answer. I'll try to keep it shorter than that. So something which can also be interactive with the audience here. That if the question is that Census 2027 will also gather caste and gender data. How do we ensure that disability data is not overshadowed by these politically louder demands? Is one of the questions which is asked by the people we don't know who. I mean, it came through the social media post. And I'm just not saying that you just answer this right way. You know, I also want to give thinking time to the panel. So there are broad 4 questions, which is like cross-cutting to all of you, and and do respond whenever you think it is to your mind. Should disability enumeration also capture intersectionality with gender, caste, urban, rural of disabled citizens to ensure targeted policies? Is the second thing which came from people at large. The third one, it says that India has counted 300 million cattle and 810 million UPI users. Why does it struggle to count its disabled citizens? And the last one which came was, there are many, we shortlisted 4 which we thought was interesting to ask in this panel. And then the last one is, if you had to recommend one game-changing reform for the Census 2027, disability enumeration, what would it be? And this was a larger thing for the audience. If they have any ideas, we can go around. So this is the broad 4 things, and when you speak, you can, in your own perspective or in your own opinion, can respond to this. The fourth one says, if you had to recommend one game-changing reform for Census 2027 disability enumeration, what would it be? Abhishek, I'll start with you, you being the youngest in the panel. And so the Census 27 will be India's first digital census. Youth today are adapted with technology, online research, and the grassroots mobilization. How do you see youth-led digital innovations and campaigns like WhatsApp campaigns or community apps, or even AI-based accessibility tools helping persons with disability understand the importance of self-identification and self-enumeration as a persons with disabilities, and also to touch upon the digital divide that we have in our country. And I am conscious of the fact, and all of us are, that the digital divide is not limited to a person with disability. At large, there's a digital divide, and there's something like self-enumeration and digital census thing. So your thought is be.
Thank you so much for having me here, firstly. When we talk about this census process, I just get reminded of this Second World War US General's very famous quote that a strategy is for amateurs, professional deals in logistics, the implementation part. So given the nature of be it the election or be it the census, it is the world's largest whenever India does such huge exercise. And in that context, when the fill the gap of the implementation challenges that we have, I think the youth, especially the youth with disabilities, can definitely play a huge role. And with the, as sir mentioned, the emerging technologies, and it is not just about artificial intelligence, it is also about data science, data analytics, machine learning, and so on. So when we're talking about, let's say, self identification and those things, there's always a taboo, a stigma attached with, especially among the youth, when they are engaging with their peer, and they may feel not very, able to identify themselves as person with disabilities, more so in the rural sector, where the awareness and sensitization is even much lower comparatively or relative to the urban centers. So in that context, the youth and the youth-led organizations or the research organizations, the centers, there are so many universities that have disability centers or study circles and so on. So they can definitely support the larger structure, the disability sector, the government and other stakeholders, and be a kind of active participatory role in the whole process, as well as the digital divide. So it is kind of relatively said that India is the average age of any Indian is 28 to 29 years old, and given the low life expectancy of person with disabilities, the average of person with disabilities is even much lower. So unless we are involving the average youth with disabilities or average Indian of the young age, we are not making the whole process, the census or the following, because when we are talking about census 2027, it is a essential sine qua non kind of milestone in our journey for Viksit Bharat. And I just always get reminded of this Acharya Chanakya's quote is Klamati Kramant Kalam Phalam Pibati. When the right thing is not done at the right time, the time itself kills its essence of that work. So unless we are not doing the disability inclusion in the census the right way, especially by bridging the digital divide or the urban-rural divide, we are going to again repeat our history of being very good at missing opportunity all the time. So yeah, in that context, it is very important.
Right, thank you. We'll exchange the mic. So, my next question with you, sir, Mr. Bhantia. To set the tone for this room, I just made the initial attempts to do so, but I think without making you do that for all of us here, you had a lot of interaction with late Sri Javed Abedi also during the 2001 and then later, and you were responsible for the census in 2011 and earlier your experience, and then particularly when you look at from two perspectives, sir. One, the anxiety amongst disabled people and the community that we are undercounted and we are not there, and also the other point being the challenges the RGI office faces, the Census Commissioner has at hand, because I'm sure the census is not specific on disability particularly. And there are so many other demands, there are so many other questions. And how do you deal, what has been your experience, and if you can set the tone for us, sir.
Thanks, Arman. It's a privilege to be here, and I'm particularly thankful to Arman and Akshay for inviting me for this. I don't know how they've located me in this country of 140 crores, but anyway, it has brought back very old memories, almost 25 years back. But first of all, my greetings to my co-panelists and the audience, and the Government of India and the Government of Goa for organizing this and allowing me to have a glimpse of this. I think we need to understand the fundamentals of a mammoth exercise. As my co-panelist mentioned, it is the largest peacetime administrative exercise taken anywhere in the world. Okay, just to give you an idea, in our own country, which is the largest democratic country on the globe, if we have to hold elections, it is held over 8 phases, 9 phases, 10 phases. Census simply cannot be done in those phases, it has to be done at one. It begins typically on 9th of February, ends on 28th of February midnight, with a revisional round between 1st and 5th of March. That has been the story in the post-independence census, barring 1971 when there was the Bangladesh war. Also, census is the most prominent exercise, possibly in my view, which I have said across the country for last 30 years, and I understood some of the government working. It's the only exercise where the government goes to every house in this country and says, how many of you, who are you? Everywhere else, you have to go to the government offices, etc., and tell who you are and what it is done, and then you get hazar problems as to why it is not done. So there's a fundamental difference between this. Look at the office. Strictly speaking, the Census Commissioner is a senior joint secretary level officer now, various additions. Chief Election Commissioners are 3 of them, not 1. with a whole army, with a whole constitutional backing. Census Commissioner doesn't have any backing except the 1948 Census Act. So there are too many challenges. The number of enumerators which you have to handle will be more than 2.5 million, more than 25 lakh people, etc., across 18 languages to be trained, etc. But I just want to again impress from my co-panelists this whole issue about urban-rural divide, digital divide included. I have been associated with various data-driven governance projects. I have launched several of these projects only for rural Maharashtra with farmers, and I did not find whatsoever any challenge in ensuring that the digital or the app-based crop survey to be done by the farmer without much difficulty. Yes, they require some persuasion, you require to have some people out there. So strictly speaking, I do not see a major challenge. The fundamental difference in this so-called digital census is a shift of the burden on who is providing the information in the census directly. Traditional censuses till 2011, for more than a century, the government appointed enumerator visits your house and collects information. In 2001 census, I made a fundamental change asking the respondent, who is the head of the household is a technical term for census, family is the ordinary term, to sign the census form so that people know what information has been collected. This was not there previously. And therefore, even when this issue about under enumeration of the disabled population in the census 2001 came, at least I could defend that this information is with the consent of the respondent over there. So if the respondent doesn't identify the characteristics associated, why should you be blaming census? Now this question again requires, and I'll seek the permission of the moderator and my co-panelists to take a little more time if it is permitted. Please try to understand what is the workload on a census enumerator? Around 600 to 750 population, which translates to about 120 to 150 families. To be done in spare time because the enumerator is a government teacher, invariably. He has to teach, no special permissions are given. On Sunday is the only day, and imagine the population, working population of this country is available only on a Sunday, on a day which they don't want to be disturbed, and drops the enumerator and saying, you please give me 45 minutes, 1 hour. Traditional censuses have 27 questions with several responses. The total number of responses to these questions go to little close to 2,000 responses. And when you add more, these are the possibilities over there. Most of the household do not take sufficient interest, I would say. However, to say that rural India would be at a disadvantage in capturing of disability, let us look at the figures of the 2001 census and the 2011 censuses. Rural India captured more disabled population than the urban population. So there is a challenge somewhere else. We need to have a look at it, sir. When you look at the states, the variation in the proportion of population reporting disabled is not too great. Somewhere between, if I remember at the top of my head, it's several years down the line now, so I may not be perfect, around 1.9% to 2.3%, that is the variation. So, and whether it is a small union territory like Lakshadweep or the biggest state like UP, the variation is around 2% plus minus something. It doesn't change urban to rural, it doesn't change by state, it does not change by male, female. There is slightly less proportion of females in the disabled population, like the overall sex ratio, for example. So we need to understand. So the first question which we need to address is, in the undercount of the population as a whole, irrespective of the characteristic, what are we missing and where are we missing? So census carries out something known as a post-enumeration survey to estimate how many people have been over-counted, that is double counted, and under-counted, and you come out with a net omission rate technically. The figure for Indian censuses right from 1951 has been in the vicinity of 1.8% to 2%. So you make statistical corrections to do the corrections in the population for various purposes, not for any other purposes. Are you in the census missing a substantive disabled population? The answer, most likely, without being passionate or dispassionate about this, is no. It should be in the same range like for any other population. So it should be very close to 2%, maybe 3%, whatever that number. It cannot be more than that. So then where are we missing? So the person who is disabled is identified, is in the set of 101 crores for 2000, maybe in the 140 crores will be there. But the characteristic of disability may not be associated with person. So that is where the problem lies in my view, and that is what we need to address. If we are missing a disabled person, it's a serious issue. If we are missing disability as a characteristic among the several social characteristics, for example, mother tongue, for example, religion, for example, there are several other things which are there, educational degrees are there, etc. So I'll give you some examples. In more than 100 crore population, the census could count 70,000 odd Parsis in the country with a near perfectness. Imagine this. Very difficult. I mean, how do you ensure Parsis community, which is restricted to certain parts of the country, not widespread, but still. But you ensure that it is done. There are obviously several challenges. How do you count the homeless population? How do you, the question which was asked to me in 2001 census, which is now being conveyed, third gender in this country, they are also invisible. You talk about eunuchs, you talk about the third gender, where are they? Till the famous Jabalpur case took place, and reservation for the political purposes took place, and a third gender person contested on a women's seat, and then it was challenged. So obviously, where do you get these certificates? There's a whole issue, etc. I'll stop here to allow my co-panelists, etc. But I'm just trying to give an idea about the vastness of the census and where we, all of us, who can work to make a difference for the 2027. I'll just end with this. I have a very sweet memory of Mr. Javed Avdi, who came to my office, and there were a lot of protests outside my office on the Mansingh Road, etc., Gherao and Dharmas and all that, but at the end of the day, we had wonderful discussions, etc. So I would like to pay my tribute and homage to Javed at this moment in time.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much. I'll come to Ms. Nanda ma'am. I think the first I must acknowledge the DEPWD being the strongest allies of persons with disabilities and goes beyond its mandate. I mean, even if there are broken footpath in Delhi, people will go to DEPWD where you don't have a direct role to play, whether it is Supreme Court of India's or whether it is accessibility. So I think it's and over my personal experience in last 5, 6, 7 years, I think it's been open to listening to us. It's listening a lot, but it has its own limitation in terms of its functionality, its mandate, and from the Supreme Court to people to giving scholarships to accessibility campaign, which there's a lot, and I always acknowledge this in public. You and Sri Rajesh Agarwal ji's leadership and through that also you have impacted Purple Fest. DPWD supports Purple Fest and started. I'm just trying to say all the good things first, then the tough question, ma'am, actually. Yeah.
I knew that was coming.
So the question, ma'am, now the census is one more additional responsibility on the DPWD. And I personally think that we have the biggest role that all of us, the sector, the people with disability, DPWD, the government, and the social welfare departments has is to create awareness about census amongst people in general, all stakeholders. And second, the enumerators, when they're trained as the master trainers, and when they go to the state, and the state who are the master trainers and who are the enumerators, what information is going on disability in a census which is got 27 question and 1 question on disability. What is your thought like? I'm sure the discussions have started in your office. The census has been talked about. People must be reaching out to you, various expectations. So what is your first thought on it, and how do you think the sector should react? How can DPWD be a partner in channelizing what the sector's demands or needs are or concerns are to the Ministry of Home and so on?
Thank you, Armanji, and thank you, NCPEDP, to have me here on this panel. It's an extreme honor, and to share this stage with so many people and individuals who have done a fair lot of work, both personal and in their occupations, to reach where they are with their own treasure of experiences, both personal and professional. And it is with that profound sense of responsibility that I stand before you to delve upon this very crucial imperative of ensuring that people with disabilities and their inclusion is truly reflected in the coming census. An endeavor and an opportunity that helps us to make a kind of a rectification or undercounting that happened, and without any and apologies to the ex-census commissioner here, it is in nowhere that we are undermining the immense role that the census and the Registrar General of India plays. It's a mammothic exercise. And with the numbers that boggle our mind, it is definitely extremely difficult. But at the point of 2011, we recognized only 7 disabilities. We represented a population, when we came up with our act in 2016, we had 21 disabilities. So there is no shine in saying that we are underrepresented in that census completely. And estimates that are done by global organizations roughly claim anything between 15 to 20%. Having said that, and there are many issues that you raised about the census process itself, of the time pressure on that poor class school teacher who has only Sunday to go and knock at the doors of various households who have clearly meant that Sunday is not a day to be disturbed. And many a times he probably knocks between the time of 2 p.m. to 4 p.m. and definitely rousing a lot of angst and anger of being woken up by the Sunday snooze. But having said that, the role and responsibility of that enumerator is far, far higher, and the impact that the census would have, because finally we will have a data which represents people with disabilities and will go a long way in formulating policies, in changing the landscape of how different departments, I would say that different departments will have to wake up to their responsibilities to provide for people with disabilities, because they come out with different schemes along with what we do for barrier-free environment, for ICT technology, for having banking solutions. There is a portal for everyone, and every department has a portal. We need to know that there is a large population in our country which was not a part of the 2011, and it is also because of many other reasons. One reason is that there is a societal pressure on that family household head who might shy away from responding to the fact that there is a person with disability in his family. It is a societal pressure not to put it out there in the open. So privacy of data is important. The way the questionnaire comes out is very, very important. And I think training of enumerators, training to the sensitization of asking these questions, to pick up certain cues which should not just be on the written word, but what they can also probably see and assess during the time of enumeration, should also probably find some way in the qualitative responsibility and reporting of that enumerator, will also go in a long way to ensure that no one is left out. And before the census starts, a mass campaign by advocates in the field of disabilities like NCPEDP themselves, we need to create a mass awareness campaign by the government, by the department, by all stakeholders like yours, to ensure that there is awareness about how important this census enumeration is, how important it is to create sensitivity towards that enumeration exercise, and the importance of providing correct data. I'll stop at that and I'll respond.
Thank you so much, and I'll come back to Rajiv, to you. I think, do you think the 2011 census underrepresented disability data, and what do you think is an important, from a data perspective and disability representation? I'm asking this question because you have done this, historic case with the Supreme Court for making accessibility a fundamental right for disabled people. What role do you think a data which comes from census will play to make India a more disabled-friendly country? And also the fact that you feel, or do you think the sector thinks that we are underrepresented in the previous two census? Over to you, Rajiv.
Thank you, Arman. Thank you for flagging this very, very important issue. Very happy to be part of this distinguished panel with Mr. Bantia and Madam JS and other friends. A little disappointed in what I heard from Mr. Bantia, because there are so many challenges when it comes to enumeration, when it comes to people with disabilities, and these are realities. He's just put across to us realities, but that's the truth. So we have the census right on our heads, big challenge for all of us in the sector. Simply put across, if you're not counted, you're not planned for. So this is putting it across very simply, that if a community is not counted, then you will not be planned for, and you will be denied so many other corresponding citizens' rights, if I may use the word. Denial in the infrastructure accessibility, transport accessibility, fields of education, livelihoods. So you will face continued denial if you're not counted enough. And that's the reason why we're looking forward to this census of at least getting us as far as possible to the accurate numbers in the country. We have consistently maintained that in India, the population is 2.2% of people with disabilities. And there's been a decadal and a half since the last census, coupled with the fact that we now have 21 disabilities. So this becomes a very, very important task for us to ensure that we get to the right numbers. And like I said, if you get the right numbers, then that gives you a lot of position of strength to argue for budgetary provisions, various aspects of budgetary provisions, whether it is scholarships, employment, transport, physical infrastructure. You will be in a position to argue with a lot of strength if you have the correct numbers.
Right. Thank you, Rajiv.
Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you.
Naman, over to you. I think you coming from PACTA, and PACTA is focused on data, I think so, and there are concerns already, right? There is a history of it, and what if we preempt that again 2027 may not have the right numbers that we perceive or we think there should be? Do you think the sectors what should we do? Do we have a parallel evidence being done, or what kind of an advocacy do you think is required and also your opinion on the data that we have from 2011 census. And also, ladies and gentlemen, I'll take a moment to welcome our panelist, Kanchan Pamnani, who's a renowned advocate and a disability activist, also a board member of NCPDP. May I request to welcome with a round of applause. Yes, back to you, Naman.
Thanks for the question, and I completely agree with Mr. Raji when he says that if you're not accounted for, then the policy will not account for you. You will not be budgeted for. Policy initiatives by center and by the state will not account for the growing and massively underreported population of people with disability that there is. The world estimate is upwards of 15% of people have some sort of a disability. So we may have strong genes and be stronger, but 2.2% is quite an underreporting on that 15%. Now, when it comes to the mandate for collecting this data and the interoperability of it, and I'll take some time on that, the mandate clearly exists within the UN Convention for Rights of Persons with Disabilities, where you're required to collect this data to influence policy, and then that's taken in India through the Rights of Persons with Disability Act 2016. And because this mandate came in later, in 2016, we didn't really see it represented properly in the 2011 census. This mandate also exists in several other fields which are sectoral specific. So this mandate exists in several high courts. About 18 of 25 high courts in this country have rules which account for legal aid societies and their state-specific legal aid committees to have an account for data regarding people with disabilities approaching the courts and approaching legal services. Prison manuals, several prison rules have mandates for prisons collecting data on people with disabilities in contact with prison systems. Several police manuals also have the same mandate for people, A, who are on the wrong side of law and may have disabilities, and B, people who are approaching them and have disabilities, and what sort of infrastructural guidance do you have to account for their complaints as well, right? And so there exists a lot of mandates for data to be collected with respect to people with disabilities. The sad answer is that it's not being done, and even when it's not being done in a manner where it's interoperable with each other. So for example, the 2011 census collected data on the age ranges of 0 to 5, 5 to 15, and within that they may account for who has a disability. When the UDI does it, when you do it under a right to education lens, and then you're looking at the ages between 6 to 14. So then there's a disaggregation of data between the two data sets you already have. The National Health and Family Survey, which accounted for about over 4% of people with disabilities, again, a clear distinction and almost twice of census 2011, has stopped collecting data on disability and is not collecting it in the same fashion in which the census does. So one thing we need to ensure, because this is the first proper act of us collecting data after the enactment of the RPWD Act, is that it must be in accordance with the benchmarks laid down in RPWD Act. By benchmarks, I don't mean that you only record data if you are above 40% benchmark, but I mean that the RPWD definitions for disability must be included in the questions you're posing to families when you go ahead for Census 27. I also just want to slightly touch upon, and I'll answer this in one word, whether this data should be collected intersectionally in terms of caste and sex and sexuality and disability. And my answer is yes, because all of these issues, if you identify only under one identity bracket or various, they all affect you cumulatively, not individually. So I think that collection needs to be intersectional.
Right, thank you so much, Naman. I will come to you, sir, next, because I think
I would like to say many things.
Yeah, I'll come to you, sir. Yes, I want you to gather your thoughts, because
Yes, I'm very well gathered for 20 years now.
Yeah. Sir, just give me a moment. I would just try to ask Kanchan in particularly when the importance of disaggregated data and disability justice. That she has done a lot of work around access for particularly the blind community and so on. So what role does it have in terms of data which comes we have, and what you are expecting that will improve lives in terms of disability justice, Kanchan?
Thank you, Aman, and sorry for being late here this morning. The one thing I'd like to say is if we're not counted and if we're not respectful of our identity, here comes the main problem. We don't want to say hum divyang hai, hum viklang hai, hum disabled hai. The point is if we do not acknowledge that, then going to the court and saying, I'm blind, I need this reservation or I need that facility, that doesn't work out. We need to see that we are counted here first and then go for the services. Services are available if we can get counted. If we know that a whole percentage of people need the service, it is easier to lobby for it, it is easier to get it. But the first thing is a mindset. Mindset at two levels, and I think the enumeration question is already gone, but on enumeration, if the enumerator does not want to ask this question because he's scared, shy, ashamed, whatever the reason is, उसको पूछना नहीं है ये सवाल कि आपके घर में विकलांग है, दिव्यांग है या disabled है और क्या disability है आपकी, okay? That question then gets left out, and if we then don't get counted, then you will hear that we get left out of the National Health Survey. Now the National Health Survey, we have gone to court in Chennai and in Calcutta, and still nothing is happening for us. So at one place, we need to be counted. The UN says so. We need it, and if we don't fight for it, if we don't ask for it, we won't get it. But we fought so hard from 2001, 2011, just getting the same numbers in 2001, 2011 with itna mehnat karke bhi, it's very disheartening. Abhi हमें करना है, and for right now, for disaggregate data, the main issue is that if you want any minor service also, we have to be counted. So, thank you.
Thank you, sir. Sir, over to you, please.
Thank you. I'm really delighted to get such views from this very experienced and engaged panelist. I'm pretty sure on the other side the audience would also be having similar views. I'm not here to dispel any views as such because everybody is entitled to have their views. Madam just mentioned 15 to 20%. On what basis? Just because WHO is saying, somebody is saying, we are not comparing definitions, concepts. One of the important things to understand any data is the metadata associated with that. Now, unless we understand the metadata relating to the data concerned, it will be impossible and we'll land up with comparing oranges with apples. My co-panelists on my lefts, they've talked about possibly the challenges in the 2.2%. So what is that magical number which you have got in mind? If you just, and I would request Arman, if you just give a blank sheet and ask everybody to put their own perceptions, etc., you will find any number from 3%, not even 3%, everybody would win 10% to any number, etc., etc. Are we going to be influenced by that? Everybody has been talking about that if you are not counted, you cannot make policies. Ridiculous. You do not require that. Is that 2.5 crore people counted as disabled in 2001 census? If we have a similar number for 2027, what prevents the government and the authorities and the political people, etc., to make policy is that this population of 3.5 crores, 4 crores, whatever, you do not require a 20 crore figure to make a policy. It's ridiculous. You don't want to make policy, say that. Why do you require that number? In this country, if you do not have numbers into crores and hundreds of crores, then you're not going to make policies. I mean, shame on people who are sitting to make policies on that, I would say. I would go to that extent. It is an acknowledged fact that disability sector is a very important sector. Why are you not making it? I don't see a relationship between that, etc. There are hundreds of characteristics for which the numbers are pretty small. We make these numbers. I think we need to differentiate between making policies. Enumeration is required not to give individual beneficiaries. I think, madam, we need to understand that. Census does not give any individual benefits to anybody. When we worked for the 2001 census, the girl child was an important thing. The whole issue about access to electricity, access to water, access to toilets. I produced hundreds and thousands of maps for the Planning Commission, etc., dividing the country into areas which had electricity as white and areas electricity without electricity is black. And I can tell you the Deputy Chairman Planning Commission and Mr. Advani, who was my home minister, etc. When I showed them the maps, in a minute they understood that the country is divided vertically east-west. All the eastern portion cutting across eastern UP, Bihar, Odisha, downwards and east, etc. Very few houses have electricity. And it changed, etc. So, madam, I would, if I were given an opportunity, I would argue that these numbers are sound enough to make policies if you want to, etc. Please be cautionary approach. Whenever there is a movement to enumerate yourself in a census, it can lead to distortion of the basic figure of the population. And if the population figure is incorrect, instead of 140 crores, you land up with 150 crores or 130 crores, then the entire population is bad. So, enumeration and characteristic of the population are two different things. I began with that premise. As regard disaggregated data and cross-separation, I'll stop at that for the moment. All the data can be disaggregated level data. It's a question, and that is where NGOs and the departments need to say, is the disability level data produced at the national level, state level, urban, rural, district level, sub-district level? What is your requirement? Do you want village-wise data? Say so. There is a full tabulation plan drawn by the Census Commissioner, put before the entire country, and you see that it takes time. Obviously, technology will help in reducing that time, which we did also. But if you require village-wise data, say so, etc. The greater and the granular is the data, the more susceptible the figures become. Every village in India will start saying, no, I got this number, this number, etc. But we should not shy away from that. As far as the cross-tabulation of the data which was mentioned on gender, age, religion, yes, it is produced. We draw a special tables for scheduled caste and scheduled tribe by every single tribe and caste of this country, state by state, age, sex, workforce, literacy, everything is done. So we must ask for disability data disaggregated and cross-tabulated, and that is a very small thing to be done.
Sir, I have a question for you, sir.
Sorry?
I have a question for you.
Yes, sir, please.
It's simple, sir. If we say for that you take a percentage of the population which is disabled, what would be that percentage according to you, sir?
I have no idea. I cannot make a guess.
Just given choice, like
See,
okay.
I mean, I can open it now. I had opened up then also, sir. The issue is not what percentage. The question which we need to understand, what is this census exercise all about, and that is what I began with. It is not to prove what the law says. If the law is defining 21 types of disabilities, why don't you conduct house to house this thing now, etc.? Why are you waiting for the census? Census will take place maybe 10 years, etc., but because of the COVID, it is taking after 15 years, 17 years. Why should we wait? Why are you not in a position to identify through certificates whatever processes we have got? You are asking a teacher to sit as the director of a medical commission to identify people with disabilities. Sorry, it's not possible. Please try to understand that. And again I am saying, I would request each one of you here involved in the sector to take that training session. How long does it take to fill a questionnaire, and what's equal importance is to be given on several other sectors. So there is a competing demand. I would earnestly request you to form a part. But if we want to make a change, there are obviously changes. We had a huge issue in capturing women's economic activity. UNIFEM, UNFPA, everybody cooperated. We did hundreds of questions on that, etc. It's a reported thing that women's economic activity is underreported, not only in censuses but in NSSs, everywhere, etc., because there is a bias. A typical case is the women prepares everything which the men goes and sells. Fishing is the only thing where the men fishes and women sell in this country, if you see. But rest of the things, all chaat, pakoras, etc., the back end is done by the women, but that is not counted because she doesn't collect the money. So the whole concept of unpaid work was introduced in 2001 census. We'll have to come out with similar things. The last point I would like to urge, this time the authorities can get away that there is an undercount. For the simple reason, it is digital census. The information is to be provided by the households directly. Enumerator's role is minimal. Please be aware of that. So if I am, as a part of the household, have a disabled person in my house, and I am the person reporting in the census questionnaire, the responsibility is on me. So for God's sake, approach 28 crore to 30 crore head of household in this country and sensitize them that you are responsible for providing that information on this household. That is the challenge. How are you going to do it is something which needs to be done. As I said, master traders, etc., all those things are there where the department and the ministries and the states and the NGOs can work. I am willing to contribute to improve upon this. Nothing. Any characteristic which is a rare characteristic cannot be collected in a census exercise. Now, this definition of rare is 2%, 5%, 7%, 8%, 10% is something which we are doubting. We have got different views on that.
Thank you so much, sir. Very interesting perspective. I would want one of the panelists to volunteer to go next. Yeah.
Sir, thank you. You gave us so much information, very relevant information. You know, there is this Washington group of questions, which I believe are very leading questions which might help the enumerators. You know, they don't have to be doctors to identify the disability. But these Washington group of questions can lead the enumerator to come to disability. What is your thought on that, sir?
Sorry, I don't want to monopolize this, etc. But yeah.
Want to add a point? Just want to
2001 census. Sorry.
Kanchan want to add.
Yeah, madam. Yeah.
I am. You're right about the policy, sir, that policies don't depend on numbers, but policies also get guided by numbers. They don't only depend on that, but yes. And we are trying our best to get our people on board, okay, get our NGOs and everybody to get counted in. The reason we are so keen on the census is really because the reality of India is there. Okay, and I can't say 5, 10, 20%, but I'm seeing in my building, which is 66 flats, there are at least 45 flats with very senior citizens who can barely walk, who can barely see. There is an autistic child just opposite my house. I am there. There's a Down syndrome girl in the building. This was not there earlier. It's coming in slowly, and I'm not living in assisted living. I'm living in an apartment on Malabar Hill, opposite the Chief Minister. So, I mean, it's coming along. We're seeing people more and more out in the open. Earlier, they were just hidden inside. We want those people counted. We want those people in front now, because we have to be there. So you're right, sir. We are going to work together with you, and let's see how we can go forward with this. But we need to be counted. Now is about the time. Yes, please.
Sure. So just to add on that percentage bit, so it may not be required to have the policies depending upon them. Policies will be there irrespective of whether we are 3%, 5 or 10%. But two important things that may depend upon the numbers or the percentage of the larger population is, for example, the reservation. So if we are 5% or the 10% or 15%, the reservation will kind of change as per the same. And the second is also the budget allocation. So the policy may be there, but the budget allocation by the ministry and the department will depend upon what exact percentage we are of the global larger population. So yeah, thank you sir for that.
I just want to add two quick things. One is, This is not an attack on the 2011
No,
census.
I don't
or
take it
how
as
was
attack,
held.
etc. I just wanted to make people understand. That's my only effort, nothing else here.
We're all really passionate about 2027 census because it's the first time we have a chance to try out the RPWD Act and collect data under it and then actually account for schemes and policies and budgets most importantly to reflect proportionality, right? Mr. Rajiv already took my point about Washington set of questions, but just to make it clear for the audience, what the questions are is they take away the stigma of disability when they're asked. So what they ask is anyone in your house has difficulty in walking? Is there anyone who has difficulty in seeing? So that really makes it easier, A, to answer, and B, makes it much more broader because then you don't need medical evaluation to answer these questions. If you have disability in walking, if you have disability in seeing, if you have disability in speaking, that is very easy to express without needing medical certificates or needing a separate disability card to be recorded for policy making purposes. So that's why we think something along those lines, which is considered the global standard for questions, would really work for Census 27.
Yeah, thank you, the panelists, for that. And I'm happy that at least we are willing to accept that numbers need not be necessarily required. They do help in making policies. So that is the first point. And I hope everybody who is involved with policy should not look for numbers. Hundreds of policies are made without any numbers, actually by perceptions in this country. So forget about that thing, etc. But that is not the forum to discuss. I'm sure my colleague understands this as well because, all our life we are doing that actually, etc. Manifestos in this country really lead to policies. For what is that number behind these manifestos in this country? Tell me. So I don't want to get into that debate, etc. That we require necessarily numbers for this, etc. It's a political will at the end of the day. Manifesto is a political will, nothing else, basically. Number two, about the Washington group. Yes, even for the 2001 census. So the census works on certain principles. One of the principles is about continuity of questions and the concepts. What I was talking about, the metadata. It's very important to understand that if I am saying an agriculture laborer for 1951 census, yes, the word agriculture laborer was used in 1951 census, but it had a connotation different than what is there in 2011 or 1 or 2000. We need to understand these data and metadata very correctly, etc., etc. As I mentioned, in the pre-independent census, the question which was there on disability is the infirmity. And precisely the same 5 were there actually. It had lunatics, dumb and deafness, etc., everything out there, etc. And in British times, etc., the way of census was considerably different. So the question which is being said is, how do you put across this question? You look at the census questionnaire form and find out how much space is there, etc. What does it lead to, etc. What all of us are saying here is part of the training which is given in the manual, how to ask this question. That is even asked, and let me try to again sort of educate, if I can use the word without offending anybody, etc. Even the enumerator is asked that you must begin with the eldest person in the family. And then go down and then find out whether. Typically, Indian censuses are accused, I am using the word very deliberately, of missing the women in this country. Forget about disability as such. Missing, undercount of women is a much serious issue, etc. Why? Because several families, again the social stigma part works over there. A female child less than 1 year old, etc. is not even treated as a part of this population as such. So can we have policies for children under 1 in this country if we do not have enough data? Sorry, yes, we should have that. So there are similar challenges, etc. That is my limited point analysis. And that is why my urge and request, please get associated, just like several groups in this country got associated with women economic activity. Everybody working in the disability sector needs to get associated at the national level, at the state level, with the Directorate of Census, etc. When the training has been given out, sit down in those sessions. What is the training given? What is the focus? What exactly has been given over there? That is going to make a huge difference over there. Hundreds of pictorials were put in the part of the manual to tell the enumerator, refer it to the enumerator to capture women's activities, economic activities. Similar things would be required on this. I'm not saying it has not been done. It must have been done at some part of the year, but that is what needs to be done on this, sir. Now, as far as this issue regarding the head of the household, if the head of the household has decided to shy away from expressing the disability, how are we going to ever address that? One of the ways one could do it is, as I mentioned, there's a pre-test which is going to come, etc. In an identified area where you know that there are disabled people over there, madam, you were mentioning about your society, etc. Find out, when the response is given, how many people have accepted this fact that they are disabled, because that is the core thing which you mentioned right at the beginning. Acceptance by the self and the family that yes, I am disabled and I need not shy away from expressing that. That is the first barrier. That is the first barrier. Please try to ensure that this exercise is done as a shadow exercise, if I can say so. Nothing prevents from the NGOs doing that, etc. You can carve out an innovation block, etc., and just find out where people are there, how they are responding, and why they are not responding. So if we have got 1,000 cases in this country, to find out why they are not responding, you could come out with an advocacy policy, all policies which would encourage people.
Right. Thank you so much, sir. Sir, very insightful thoughts from all the panelists. I think I should stop doing what I do and do something else. I think there's a lot to be done before we get what it is. Ma'am, very naturally, all questions are leading to you. So you heard all of the panelists, and I, as an individual or as an executive director of NCP DP, would urge DEPWT to lead us to this, the next census, and make us do what we need to do to kind of get the kind of information or data that the census 2027 has the potential of giving. And also with your additional thoughts, ma'am, whatever you have to add of all the deliberations and the comments that came from the panelists.
So to keep it short, I think we are, though we may be very excited about the census, there are certain challenges that we as the ministry, not conducting the census but working with PWDs and all the other stakeholders here, we need to take on certain mitigation steps in terms of improving our awareness generation. We need to actually counter for the fact that if the household head of the family has an inherent problem in accepting disability in his family, there may be a requirement to look at that questionnaire and to ensure it reaches the right person in the RGI office, to not ensure that the question only deals with yes and no answers. I think that's where the problem starts. It also refers to how we can contribute towards enumerator training and sensitization, which will also help them pick up cues when they do go and physically speak. And because our country is primarily rural and the digital divide extremely strong, and in terms increases the inequality and disparity across the Bharat and India that we see today, I think it's more and more important to have greater awareness focus there. Acceptability of disability by family households there, by our foot soldiers there. I think we should not lose this opportunity to ensure that the unspoken invisible majorities, many of which are not accepted as disability, do not get left out. Of course, our policies don't depend upon these at all. We have actually come out with all major policies way after 2011 census. Nothing stopped us from improving the policy and taking it forward. But yes, budgeting across different departments, not just DEPWD. DEPWD is not the only torchbearer for bringing about policies for PWDs. The requirement for this data would ensure that there is an accessibility fund or money set aside across all different departments, so that accessibility is cross-cutting. It does not have to deal not with MIT. I mean, even MAUA needs to take into account accessibility measures, education needs to take into account accessibility measures, airport authorities of India, everybody. So I think that is very important. And I was just wondering, one food for thought, if it's only the household data that gets enumerated, what about our PWDs who are at institutions? Many of them were left behind last time. Are we going to be left behind now? Or is there a factor that was taken in during the 2011 census? I don't know about it, so just a thought that came to my mind. Thank you.
So the population includes the what we call the normal population living in normal houses and all sorts of houses. Institutional populations include population living in hostels, population living in jails, hospitals, hotels, etc., etc., etc. Any building in which a human being dwells is captured and enumerated for census purposes. So obviously it includes all institutional population. You can do several checks on this. For example, find out if there is a hostel with disabled or fully disability hostel. Are they in a position to enumerate themselves and identify there itself? That should be the least difficult, etc. There are ways and ways to check that, etc. No difficult. Sorry? Yeah. So I'm just coming. I mentioned to that last night to Arman on that. Homeless population is there's a huge issue about defining what is homeless, etc. So census enumerates the homeless population through several methodologies, etc., which I can share outside this forum also, which is the most challenging. As I said, getting third gender, getting homeless population, there are all sorts of populations which need their characteristics is the secondary issue. The first thing is getting them enumerated first of all. That is the first thing, etc. So we should not be missed. That is the first thing. To the extent possible, whatever are our true characteristics, if they are revealed and captured. Revealing is something which all of us have to work. Capturing can be put in the domain of the enumerators so far, unlikely for 2027, because as the head of the household, you are going to fill in, you are going to certify that, etc., etc. One single person responsible for the census 2027 information, all information will be the head of the household. So there's a fundamental shift in the capturing methodology of the census for the first time.
Thank you so much, sir. I think we will all look forward to your continuous guidance on this. I will now open the floor for questions. We have about another 10 minutes and a few questions. Those who have any questions, as 1, 2, yeah. So can somebody please the mic here to gentlemen, and then we'll come to you, sir. Yes, Akshay, there and then there. Please do identify yourself and then follow it with your question. Akshay.
Yeah, hello, my name is Jayan Gandhi. I'm from the academia and the tech field, basically. Wanted to have, just now I came from another session. As we prepare for this 2027 census, now already the AI and, I'm sorry. My name is Jayan Gandhi. My question is basically about 2027 census we are talking about. Now already the AI and other tools are already in changing the way we collect data, employ data, analyze that data, and at the end of the day, 85% of the AI pilots have been failing across the globe. And how the government ensures that no bias creep in is there? Is the AI going to be a filter or a kind of a value giver? Also, how much of the private sector tech human resources are going to have the say in that? See, at the end of the day, the data becomes a cold statistics. So, gentleman said quite a few points on that. But where's the human angle to it? That's my question.
Thank you. Should we take both the questions? The mic here, please.
Hi, I'm Madhav Negi. I'm from Hyderabad. My question is, why are we not thinking of a continuous census now with computing technology available instead of every decade or so? It's a policy process question.
Right. So, one more? Yeah, let's take two and we'll come back. Yes. So first the two questions, ma'am, sir, and Naman.
Though I'm not from the government, I'll just say that census is a very expensive process and it disrupts everything else also around it. So this continuous census is a great idea. There are lots of other enumerations that are going on. Every couple of years we have an employment one, we have a health survey, etc. And every sector is doing their own enumerations. But continuous in the long term may be a good idea, but at the current moment it's too expensive. It's like elections. It's very expensive.
Shall I?
It's good to understand.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. Firstly, coming to the AI point, so it's not just about AI, it's also more about machine learning or the small language models that we can use, so that though we have data of UDID card, we have the data by the Election Commission of voters with disabilities, so we can collate and then form a pattern and what are the anomalies between the two data of the regions of the district where the problems or the patterns are there, and those emerging technologies can definitely help in addressing. However, as there was this Prime Minister Modi also documented that AI has its own biases. So even if you tell us to draw a picture of a person with the left hand, it will still draw a picture of person using the right hand. So we just can't over rely on the artificial AI as of now. And coming to the second point on the census, the continuous census, I agree with ma'am's point. And I to further want to add that census had just 28-30 kind of questions, and it is across ministries and departments. So it can't cover every aspect of person with disabilities. Kind of collect some major things like, are you person with disability, what type of disability, are you benchmark or not. But it can't cover whether do you need reasonable accommodation, do you have assistive technologies or not, who sourced that, have you accessed caregiver, whether they are personal or you're paying for those things. So I think in that context, we need a special later on maybe a national disability census as well. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, so first of all, again, let me say, it's a myth that census is expensive. Okay? It doesn't count. It doesn't cost far too much. For 140 crore people getting this sort of a data, it's pretty cheap actually, etc. That is the first thing, etc. And expenses have come down now because of the way the data is going to be collected. We made a fundamental change in the way data was processed in 2001 census. We did not go for IMR, etc. We went for the intelligent character reading. We did not go for OMR and all that techniques. Intelligent character reading was the first machine learning, what we are saying AI, which was used in the 2001 census, and India was the first country in the world to use that, etc. Which means most of the responses are in digit 0 to 9. Okay? Most of the responses, all the responses are there. Everybody in this country who participated in the census, on the census form was written how to write 0 to 9. Not the way you have been taught in your school and all your life. And that is what was the machine supposed to be reading with a 99.9% accuracy. It was an Israel-driven technology driven. Okay, that is the first point. So census is not expensive. However, there is a big however. You cannot be doing continuous census. The whole concept of doing continuous census is something known as the population register. Okay, where you have the entire population, not citizenship again, population in your register by place of address. And as I was mentioning yesterday, we are having basic governance issues in this country. We do not have an address system in this country. Okay, you will be surprised, but that is the truth. So if we have an address system with population over there, with their background characteristics. So what are the background characteristics which we collect in the census, which we can collect? Your educational qualifications are there. If you are passed out through school or universities, or you are in school, or you are about to go to school, that is known in the school registers and everywhere else. Whatever is your employment status is known through business registers, etc. Whatever is your religion, your social characteristics, your mother tongue and other things, etc. is known over there. If you are belonging to a scheduled caste and scheduled tribe so far in this country, and if other castes are added, then that is also known. If you have all in this register, you do not require anything except knowing how many people are alive at this moment in point in time, how many people are dead, how many people are alive, born new. And if you have moved from one address to another, which include within the city, across the state, across the country, you do not require then a census. We are far away from that, madam. However, there are several countries in the world, particularly Northwest Europe, which have been having the population register right from 1980s. They do not require, because everybody is accepted to follow the law. You need to report, you need to report, you need to report, which is not possible somehow or the other in our country, but we are not far away from there. As far as use of AI and technology for tabulation purposes, etc., there are obviously challenges which my friend has mentioned very rightly, etc. And there are a lot of no responses, etc. You need to treat them through methods. You are from the academics. There are whole situations, models which have to be created. What do you do in a no response, etc. And there are obviously linkages, etc. with age, certain things, etc. with economic activity. Scheduled caste, scheduled tribe, for example, scheduled caste has to be from a Hindu religion, a Buddhist religion, a Sikh religion. So you need to cross-tab all these, etc. There are obviously a lot of back-end work to be done before we get. But the most important point, and I would request each one of you here to understand this, at the end of the day, the amount of trust which we put in the census data, it has to be robust. If it is not robust, obviously nobody would like to have it. And therefore, when you go on adding pressure on anything, etc., at the end of the day, it bursts out of seams, and the entire exercise becomes useless. Do we want such a census in this country? With anything we added, that is the $1 million question, and it includes the caste question.
Thank you so much. Yes, the two more, sir, just, I'll come to you. Yeah, we'll come. We are out of time already, okay? And just be very pointed questions, and anything which has been asked or spoken of, try to avoid that. You and then the lady there. Yes.
Myself, Roma Chaturvedi, I'm from Kanpur, and a person with lived experience. I'm a parent of a 19-year-old boy with autism. I just have a very pointed question. As the head of the household, if the census person comes to me, do I have to show the disability certificate also?
No, madam, no certificate are required.
So,
for example, when you say you believe a particular religion, no certificate is required. If you say you are educationally qualified like this, or you are going to school, no certificate is required. If you belong to a scheduled caste, scheduled tribe, no certificate is required. Census is all about trust, and the privacy is uttermost important. At no cost, even a court can ask for census record. If a court asks for a census record, and I got hundreds of such cases, including marital disputes and whatever you can call it, it's a funny world at the end of the day. We just tell the court, except the eyes of the judge, nobody else can see, neither the advocates, nobody can see that.
thank you so much.
So that's very, otherwise the census would be dead. If privacy is not mentioned, why should you and I be sharing that information with the government? So privacy is maintained at any cost.
Over to you, ma'am.
Hello, I'm Asha, and I'm from Goa. Hello, I'm Ashna and I'm from Goa. And I was wondering about the digital divide that you were talking about earlier, and how are we looking at, like, because the onus of reporting will be on the family and the head of the family, how are we looking at solving or like bridging that gap?
Well, I'm not here. I'm in part of the technical advisory committee, but I'm not running the office. I retired 20 years back from the census, etc., etc. But we are given to understand is all these apps will be available, etc. You will be told how to fill in the census. There will be a massive exercise, and then the census enumerator would visit each of the family between 9th of February and the 28th of February 2027, if that is the final date declared for the census, to find out if you have got a challenge in filling that form, and also if there is inaccuracy for something over there, because there has to be a consistency in the data, etc. The technology allows us to know, unlike the paper format, to know if there is an inconsistency. So that much intelligence is built in the form right now when you capture the data. For example, if you are saying that you are 80 years old and going to school, obviously it will point out that, oh, okay, please a question mark, whether you are 80 years old and going to school. It could be true, but you will be raised in red alert, please verify this, etc. Similarly, if a 10-year-old is going to a university, there will be a question mark for him, because questions are linked, responses are linked in such a manner in that, etc. So there will be these intelligent characters built in the format over there, etc. My personal feeling is there would be some challenges in the digital part, etc. Inaccessibility, for example, for homeless and institutional, etc. Who's going to fill that, etc. But that is where it is proposed that census would be a mix in a limited manner of the manual way of collecting data, and most of it will be digital. The advantage of the digital would be it should allow faster data processing, not converting the manual data to a digital format, which involves obviously errors when you convert it, etc., etc.
Thank you so much, sir. The last question, yes, be very to the point, huh? Don't repeat.
Hi sir, good afternoon sir. Manjunath here from Bangalore. So basically, see, given the fact there are, so many limitations were there. Even after that, we obtained the data as per 2011. So due to various reasons, census could not take place for almost 17 years. So next, my concern is next, what we can suggest to government, if any disability occurs, any people become disabled due to one or the other reasons after 2027, next 10 years or so. So any suggestions would be given to government from the panel side, how it would be? My question is clear.
So, thank you,
Yeah,
but
thank you.
The government doesn't, or policies don't stop because of gap in between two different census. The government has announced, will continue engaging with the stakeholders. There will be a requirement for us to move ahead, because finally the government already has or implementing the roadmap to Viksit 2047. So in all of that, the planning, the looking way ahead, engaging with stakeholders, requiring funds to be improved and increased under different schemes are already under the observation of the different departments. And I think census is just an exercise that of course helps us to make our policies more data driven, but nothing stops in the government. So there is the constant interaction with the private sector, participation in non-governmental forums, stakeholder discussions will continue to move this ecosystem ahead.
Thank you so much. I think there are a lot of questions and answers. I am to have to be conscious of time. My request with the panelists and the audience, can you please take this conversation forward offline, off the stage? I have to prepare for the next panel. Yes, sir.
Everybody,
Please.
I mean, getting the sense of the house here and the panelists, can we say 20% of the enumerators we would identify as disabled person?
That's an excellent idea, sir. I think that's
40% of the supervisors and 30 to 50% of the household would be sensitized. Your battle would be won, substantively if not fully.
Right, that's a good idea. We'll definitely. Thank you so much, everyone. Please give a big round of applause for all of them. Yeah, I'm sure. So may I request Mr. Praveen Kumar, CMD, Elimco, to please join us on stage to kindly facilitate the panelists. Please, yeah. I think there's a lot of learning on this session, and I think the sector needs to change its gear. I think we stop kind of complaining and have to start act and recalibrate itself to the next. Yes.
No.
I get it, sir. Yes, we need to get into the parliament. Yes. Thank you.